All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about sertraline, which you probably know by its brand name, Zoloft. I mean, it is one of the most common antidepressants in the entire world. It helps millions of people. But there's this weird catch, this puzzle that a lot of people experience, and that's what we're going to unpack today. The secret behind why a drug that's supposed to help your brain so often ends up affecting your gut. I mean, that really is the million-dollar question we're digging into. Have you ever stopped to think about that? Why would a pill for your brain cause so many issues in your stomach? It just feels wrong, kind of counterintuitive. Well, let me tell you, the answer is way more fascinating than you think, and it tells us a ton about how our bodies are all connected. You know, for most of us, the story is pretty simple. We think of sertraline as a brain drug, pure and simple. A doctor prescribes it to work on brain chemistry, all to help people with their mental health. And yeah, it's prescribed for a whole bunch of stuff. We're talking major depressive disorder, PTSD, panic attacks, social anxiety, the list goes on. But the goal is always the same, right? To stabilize your mood by targeting the central nervous system. But if that's all it did, then where do these gut problems come from? It just doesn't add up. Okay, so to really crack this case, we have to look somewhere else entirely. We've got to look past the brain, because the real clue isn't where the drug works, it's what it works on. And that, my friends, brings us to a very famous chemical you've definitely heard of, serotonin. Okay, I want you to look at this number, 90 to 95%. Just take a second and let that sink in. What in the world could that be referring to? That is how much of your body's entire supply of serotonin is located in your gut. Not your brain, your gut. And that right there is the big reveal. The huge majority of this so-called feel-good chemical isn't made in your head. It's made and stored in your digestive system. And this chart just makes it so clear. We're all taught to think of serotonin as this brain chemical, but really, the brain is just a tiny little satellite office. The real headquarters, the main production plant, it's all happening in the gut. And once you grasp that single fact, man, it changes everything about how you look at a drug like sertraline. Okay, so now we know where all the serotonin is actually hiding. And with that knowledge, we can finally get how sertraline really works. It's not a laser-guided missile for the brain. It's having what you'd call a systemic effect. It's affecting your whole body. So, sertraline belongs to a class of drugs called SSRIs. That stands for Selective Serotonin Reuptake Inhibitor. Now, I know that sounds super technical, but the core idea is actually pretty straightforward. Think of its job as blocking the cleanup crew for serotonin. By doing that, more serotonin hangs around, staying active and sending more messages between your cells. Let's just walk through the steps, okay? So step 1, a cell releases some serotonin to send a signal. Then step 2, this little protein, it's called SERT, comes in to basically vacuum it all back up. That's how the signal ends. But here comes sertraline, step 3. And it physically blocks that vacuum, that SERT transporter. So what's the result? Step 4, a whole lot more serotonin is just left hanging out in the space between cells, making the original signal way stronger. It's literally like turning up the volume on that serotonin message. And this is the absolute key to the whole puzzle. When you swallow that pill, it doesn't have like a little GPS system that says, go to the brain and only the brain. No way. It gets into your bloodstream and travels everywhere, all over your entire body, which means it's blocking those SERT transporters everywhere it finds them, including, you guessed it, the gut, which is where most of them live. So this brings us to what I think is the most important idea in this whole explainer. It's a total reframe. Those gut problems people get, the nausea, the diarrhea, they're not side effects in the way we usually think about them. It's not the drug messing up or doing something wrong. They are what we should call on-target effects. In fact, there's a quote from the research that just nails this point. It says that these gastrointestinal symptoms are not merely incidental side effects, but rather direct consequences of the drug's primary mechanism. In plain English, the drug is working perfectly. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's just doing it in a place that catches most people by surprise. So how does this actually happen? Let's get specific. All that extra serotonin floating around in your gut starts to overstimulate certain receptors there. For nausea, which happens to about a quarter of people who take it, that serotonin hits receptors that basically send a direct, "Hey, I feel sick now" message straight to your brain. And for diarrhea, which can affect up to 1 in 5 people, that serotonin just makes the whole digestive system speed up and pump out more fluid. It's a direct cause and effect. And look, these on-target effects are not just a minor annoyance. This isn't trivial. Nausea and diarrhea are literally the #1 and #2 reasons that people stop taking their medication. That alone tells you how powerful and significant this gut reaction can be.
Now, it's also really important to understand this whole thing as a spectrum, okay? On one end, you've got the common GI issues from just sertraline alone, which thankfully often get better after a few weeks. But if you crank that same mechanism, serotonin overstimulation, all the way up to the other end of the spectrum, you get something called serotonin syndrome. It's rare, but it's a serious, life-threatening emergency. It happens when people combine different drugs that all boost serotonin, causing a total system overload. And the symptoms, well, they're a way more extreme version of the same thing: severe GI distress, but also fever and confusion.
So where does this leave us? What's the bigger picture here? Well, understanding all this is sparking some seriously exciting new thinking about the future of mental health treatment. We're starting to look at a future that might be focused right in the gut. What this all really does is shine this giant, bright spotlight on what scientists call the gut-brain axis. The best way to picture it is as a two-way communication superhighway. Information is constantly flying back and forth between your gut and your brain, and serotonin, it's one of the main vehicles on that highway. It means what's happening in your gut can absolutely influence your mood, and what you're thinking can affect your gut. They're in constant conversation. And this idea is causing a huge paradigm shift in how we think about treatment. I mean, think about it. If this connection is so powerful, maybe, just maybe, we don't have to send drugs all the way up to the brain. What if we could treat the brain through the gut? Researchers are actually working on this, developing what they call gut-targeted SSRIs. These would be drugs designed to work only in the gut. The goal would be incredible: treat mood disorders by tapping into that gut-brain highway right at the source, and maybe, just maybe, get rid of all those other systemic side effects, and even create safer options for use during pregnancy. Which brings us to a final, pretty mind-blowing question. After everything we've talked about, from discovering the gut is the body's serotonin factory to the possibility of gut-only treatments, you just have to ask, right? Could the entire future of mental health treatment lie not in our heads, but in our guts? It is a truly revolutionary idea, and honestly, it could change everything.